When the field looks healthy, that is when the danger begins. One morning, the control room seemed quieter than usual. No alarms, no compressor trips. The separators were operating normally. Production rates were almost the same as the previous week. Everyone assumed the field was performing well. The operations supervisor smiled as he looked at the dashboard. The reservoir engineer signed off on the daily production report. The production engineer moved on to the next task. Nothing seemed wrong, but several months later, the field began to lose production. The decline was not large. It was not dramatic, but it was enough to change the future of the field. The first question came quickly. What happened? The team began searching for the cause. Some blamed the reservoir, some blamed the wells, others blamed the facilities, but the real cause had begun to reveal itself much earlier. The field had already been sending signals. No one had been listening. The field is always speaking. A reservoir rarely changes overnight. A separator does not suddenly become unstable. Slugging does not appear without a cause. A flare does not suddenly grow larger for no reason. Every major change begins with a small signal. Pressure shifts slightly. Water cut begins to rise. The compressor works a little harder. The separator becomes slightly less stable. Control valves begin moving more frequently. To some people, these changes are merely normal operating variations. But to an engineer who understands the life cycle of a field, these small changes are a language. The field is speaking. The engineer's greatest mistake. For decades, the oil and gas industry has taught us how to drill wells, how to start up a field, how to increase production, how to repair and restore wells. But far less attention is given to one of the most difficult engineering challenges. How do we keep a field healthy when everything appears to be operating normally? Yet this is precisely where a significant part of a field's long-term economic value can be lost. Not during startup, not during decline, but during the plateau, because plateau is often misunderstood as a period when nothing is wrong. In reality, plateau is the phase that demands some of the greatest engineering discipline. This book is not about plateau. This book is not simply about startup. It is not about separators. It is not about flares. It is not about compressors. And it is not about decline. These are all parts of a much larger story. The story of a living system. An oil and gas field is not merely a collection of wells. It is not merely a collection of facilities. It is not merely a collection of production data. A field is a living system that changes every day. The most successful engineer is not necessarily the one who can increase production the fastest. It is the engineer who can recognize changes in the system before those changes become obvious to everyone else. Lifecycle intelligence. This is what I call lifecycle intelligence. It is the ability to understand the connections between startup, plateau, multiphase behavior, surface facilities, diagnostics, production decline, and ultimately, rejuvenation. Lifecycle intelligence is not software. It is not a workflow. It is not a checklist. It is a way of thinking, a way of seeing, a way of listening, a way of making decisions. And the more mature a field becomes, the more important this capability becomes. A book about how to see. This book does not offer instant recipes. Not every field has the same reservoir. Not every well requires the same solution. Not every production system behaves in the same way. But every field has one thing in common: it always leaves clues. Good engineers learn to read data. Great engineers learn to read systems. And the engineers who extend the productive life of a field are those who learn to connect the two. Because in the end, the field is never truly silent. We are simply too often late in learning how to listen. Startup brings a field to life. Plateau tests its discipline. Decline reveals its weaknesses. Renewal rewards those who learn to listen.